The rain had been falling over New York City for hours, washing the streets in silver reflections and blurring the neon lights into soft halos. Inside a small apartment on the 23rd floor, Emma sat alone with her laptop glowing in the dark. The world outside was loud. Her room was silent. She stared at the blinking cursor on the screen, wondering how something so small could feel so intimidating. A single line waiting to be written, a single truth waiting to be faced. 3 years ago, she had believed in love the way children believe in the sky endless, constant, unquestionable. Tonight, she believed in nothing. Her phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. She ignored it. These days, she ignored most things. Outside, thunder rolled across the skyline. Inside, her memories began to speak. She remembered the first day she met Jack. It was late October, the kind of afternoon when the air feels crisp but hopeful. She had been sitting in a small coffee shop in Brooklyn, headphones in, typing quietly while life moved around her. She was a writer, or at least she was trying to be. Deadlines were tight. Rent was high. Dreams were expensive. Is this seat taken? She looked up. He was smiling, slightly out of breath, holding two coffees. No, she said softly. He sat down across from her like it was the most natural thing in the world. You look like someone who writes stories, he said. She raised an eyebrow. And you look like someone who interrupts them. He laughed. That laugh. It was warm, uncomplicated, safe. Maybe one day, he continued, you'll write about me. Maybe, she replied, pretending not to feel the spark. What started as shared tables turned into shared conversations. Shared conversations turned into shared evenings. And soon, shared evenings turned into shared dreams. Jack wasn't just charming. He listened. When she talked about her father leaving when she was 10, he didn't change the subject. When she admitted she was terrified of abandonment, he held her hand tighter. I'm not going anywhere, he told her once, looking straight into her eyes. And she believed him. That was her first mistake. Months passed. They built routines. Sunday brunch, late night walks, movie marathons when neither of them actually watched the screen. She let him in. Fully, completely, dangerously. But love doesn't collapse in one moment. It cracks quietly. The good morning text became occasional. The calls shortened. The excuses multiplied. I've just been stressed. Work's crazy. You're overthinking. And she wanted to believe him. So she did, until the night everything shattered. She hadn't planned to surprise him. She had just been nearby after meeting a client and thought she'd stop by. The door to his apartment was slightly open. She heard laughter. Inside, a woman's laughter. Her heart didn't break. Immediately. He paused. Then it sank. She pushed. The door opened slowly. There he was, sitting on the couch, close. His hand resting on another woman's thigh like it belonged. There, time didn't explode. It froze. Jack looked up first. The color drained from his face. Emma, wait, it's not, but the truth doesn't need full sentences. It lives in body language. In silence. In distance. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply turned around and walked out. Rain soaked her within seconds, but she couldn't feel it. Because betrayal doesn't hurt. Loudly. It numbs you first. That night, she sat on her kitchen floor, staring at the wall. Her phone vibrated nonstop. Jack calling. Jack. Texting. I messed up. It meant nothing. I love you. She stared at the words until they blurred. Love doesn't cheat. Love doesn't lie. Love doesn't hide. Or maybe it does. Maybe she had misunderstood love entirely. Days passed. Then weeks. She stopped answering friends. Stopped going out. Stopped writing. The fear she thought she had healed from as a child returned stronger than ever. Everyone leaves. That belief wrapped around her chest like a rope. One night, while searching through old boxes, she found her mother's journal. Inside, on a folded page, were the words, when someone walks away, it's not always your loss. Sometimes it's your protection. She read it again, and again, and again. Something shifted. Not hope, not forgiveness, but clarity. She opened her laptop for the first time in weeks. Her fingers trembled. Then she began typing. She thought this time would be different. The words poured out of her like salt rain finally finding a drain. She wrote about trust, about silence, about the sound of a door half open. She wrote about how betrayal feels like falling without hitting the ground. And when she finished, she didn't feel healed, but she felt lighter. Weeks later, she published the story anonymously online. She didn't expect much, but the comments started coming. This is exactly what I went through. I cried reading this. Thank you for putting this into words. For the first time since that night, she didn't feel alone. Her pain had become someone else's comfort, and maybe that was purpose. Then one evening, months later, her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't unknown. It was him. A single message. I read your story. Her heart didn't race the way it used to. It beat steadily, calm, stronger. But the past has a way of testing your healing. She stared at the screen and wondered, was this closure or the beginning of another storm? The message stayed on her screen longer than it should have. I read your story, just 6 words, 6 simple words that carried the weight of everything she had survived. Emma didn't reply immediately. The old version of her would have typed back within seconds. The girl who needed answers. The girl who needed closure. The girl who confused apology with love. But this version of her was different. She placed the phone face down on the table and walked to the window. Manhattan shimmered beneath her like a restless ocean of light. Cars moved. People hurried. Somewhere, someone was laughing. Somewhere else, someone was breaking. Life didn't pause for heartbreak, and neither would she. Her laptop was still open on the desk. Comments continued to flood in under her story. Thousands now. She had titled it. The night the door was half open, readers called it raw, honest, brutal, beautiful. What they didn't know was that every sentence had cost her a memory. Her phone buzzed again. I'm not asking for anything, Jack wrote. I just wanted to say, I didn't realize how much I hurt you until I read it. She closed her eyes. There it was, the familiar pull. Not love, not exactly, but history. Memories of Sunday mornings. His laugh. The way he used to brush her hair behind her ear. Trauma bonds feel like love when you don't know the difference. She typed 3 words. Why now, Jack? The response came quickly. Because I lost everything. She almost smiled. Of course. It wasn't about her healing. It was about his loneliness. What do you want? She asked to talk. Just once. In person. Silence filled the room again. Fear whispered. Don't go. Curiosity whispered. What if? Strength whispered. You're not the same girl anymore. She agreed. One meeting. Public place. No expectations. The CAF was neutral territory. Not the one where they met. Not anywhere sentimental. When he walked in, she noticed something immediately. He looked smaller. Not physically, but emotionally. Confidence replaced by hesitation. Emma, he said softly. Hi. They sat across from each other like strangers holding shared secrets for a moment. Neither spoke. Then he exhaled. I was selfish. He began. I liked attention. I liked knowing someone else wanted me. I didn't think I'd lose you. There it was. The truth. Not romantic. Not poetic. Just ego. She studied his face carefully. Did you love me? She asked. He hesitated. That was answer enough. I thought I did, he said finally. Thought. Past tense. Conditional. She nodded slowly. I loved you, she said. But I loved you from a place of fear. I loved you because I was scared of being alone. His eyes softened. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did. Simple, direct. No anger, just fact. He reached for her hand across the table. She pulled it back. Gently, that small movement said more than words ever could. I read your story, he repeated. You turned pain into something powerful. She leaned back in her chair. I didn't write it for you. No. And I'm not angry anymore. That surprised him. I'm grateful, she continued. He blinked. Grateful? You broke the illusion. I needed that. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Inside, something quietly closed. Are you seeing someone? He asked. She smiled faintly. That's not your business. For the first time since they sat down, she felt fully in control. Not defensive. Not emotional. Grounded. I wanted to ask if there's any chance, he began. No, she didn't raise her voice. She didn't hesitate. Just one word. Clear. Final. He looked down at the table. Do you forgive me? He whispered. She thought about it carefully. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's releasing yourself from carrying the weight. Yes, she said. Not for him. For her. They stood up at the same time. There was no hug. No dramatic goodbye. Just two people who once shared a chapter. Now closing the book.as, she stepped outside. The air felt lighter. Not because he was gone, but because she no longer needed him to be anything. That night, she wrote again. But this time, the story was different. It wasn't about betrayal. It was about boundaries. It wasn't about heartbreak. It was about self-respect. She titled it, The Woman Who Chose Herself. The response was even bigger. Women from all over the country wrote to her, men too. They shared their stories, their pain, their healing, and slowly, Emma realized something profound. Her worst night had built her strongest voice. Weeks passed. Her platform grew. Podcast invitations came. In interviews, book deals. The girl who once cried on a kitchen floor was now speaking on stages about resilience. But healing isn't linear. Some nights, memories still visited. The sound of that half-open door, the laughter, the silence. But now, those memories didn't control her. They reminded her of strength, of growth, of survival. One evening, after a live storytelling event in Chicago, a man approached her backstage. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't overly confident. He simply said, "Your story helped my sister leave a toxic relationship. Thank you." She felt something warm in her chest. Not romantic, purposeful. And then he added, "By the way, I'm Daniel." She smiled politely. Emma. They talked for a few minutes. Easy conversation. No pressure. No sparks flying dramatically. Just calm. Before leaving, he said, "If you ever want to grab coffee." No expectations. She noticed something different about this invitation. It didn't feel like gravity pulling her in. It felt like air. Light. Optional. She took his card. That night, in her hotel room, she stared at it. Was she ready? Or was she still healing? Growth doesn't mean you never fear again. It means fear doesn't decide for you. She placed the card on the nightstand and turned up the light. Across the room, her phone buzzed. A notification. Her latest story had just crossed 1 million reads. 1 million people connected to her pain. 1 million reminders that broken doesn't mean finished. She closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she felt safe within herself. But life wasn't done testing her yet. Because sometimes, the real challenge isn't surviving betrayal. It's allowing yourself to love again. And Emma had no idea. Chicago was colder than she expected. The wind cut through the streets like unfinished sentences, sharp and restless. Emma stood outside her hotel the next morning, coffee in hand, staring at Daniel's card. No expectations. Those two words felt unfamiliar. Her past had always come with intensity, passion, drama, fireworks. But peace was new. She checked out of the hotel and boarded her flight back to New York. The city greeted her with its usual chaos, taxis honking, strangers rushing, skyscrapers reaching unapologetically toward the sky. 3 years ago, she had felt small in this city. Now, she felt rooted. Her second story had exploded online. Podcast invitations multiplied. A publisher emailed her about turning her essays into a book. Pain had built a platform, but success doesn't silence memory. That night, alone in her apartment, she opened her laptop to write again. The cursor blinked patiently, like an old friend. She hesitated, because this time, the story wasn't about heartbreak. It was about possibility. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She frowned and answered cautiously. Emma. The voice was familiar. Too familiar. Her chest tightened. It wasn't Jack. It was her father. She hadn't spoken to him in 12 years. "I read your interview," he said quietly. "I didn't know." You carried so much. Silence stretched between them like a bridge neither knew how to cross. "You left," she said finally, not accusing, just stating truth. "I know," he replied, "and I regret it every day." Her breath grew shallow. The little girl inside her, the one who watched a suitcase roll out the door, stirred awake. Fear returned. Old wounds don't disappear. They wait. "I don't want money," he continued, "or forgiveness. I wanted to say I'm proud of you." Proud. The word hit harder than betrayal ever had. Because betrayal from a lover breaks your heart. Abandonment from a parent shapes it. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. "I needed you," she whispered. "I know." There it was again. Too late. After the call ended, she sat on the edge of her bed trembling. Not from weakness, from release. All her life she had searched for stability in relationships because she never had it in childhood. Jack wasn't the origin of her fear. He was a mirror of it. And now, standing at the intersection of past and present, she faced a choice bigger than love. Would she continue living from wounds, or from wisdom? The next day, she called her father back. Not to reconcile instantly, not to erase history, but to begin a conversation. Healing doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It means choosing growth over resentment. Weeks passed. She met her father for coffee in a quiet bookstore, CF uptown. He looked older, smaller, human. They didn't hug immediately. They talked about time, about mistakes, about loneliness. He admitted he left because he felt like a failure, couldn't provide, couldn't cope. It was easier to run than to stay and feel inadequate, he confessed. Emma listened differently this time, not as a child waiting to be saved, but as an adult understanding complexity. Pain had layers. So did people. Forgiveness didn't happen in that moment, but understanding did. And understanding softened something inside her. That evening, she finally texted Daniel. Coffee. No expectations. He replied with a simple smiley face and a location. Their first meeting wasn't cinematic. No dramatic music. No slow motion. Just two people talking about books, travel, awkward childhood stories. He didn't ask about her ex. He didn't try to impress her. He asked thoughtful questions. He listened, really listened. At one point, he said, "You don't have to be strong all the time, you know." It startled her. Strength had been her armor, her identity, her survival tool. "What if I don't know how to be anything else?" she asked softly. He smiled gently. Then we learned there was no rush, no intensity, just steady presence. Weeks turned into months. Daniel never promised forever. He promised honesty. He never said, "I'll never hurt you." He said, "If I ever do, we'll talk about it." It felt safe, not because it was guaranteed, but because it was real. One evening, as they walked across the Brooklyn Bridge, city lights reflecting beneath them, Emma paused. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Of what?" "Of trusting again," Daniel nodded. "That makes sense. No defensiveness, no ego, just acknowledgement." "I don't need you to be fearless," he said. "I just need you to be willing." Willing. That word stayed with her. Back home that night, she opened her laptop and she began writing her final piece. It wasn't about betrayal. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about love. It was about choice. She wrote about how fear can protect you, but it can also imprison you. She wrote about how happiness doesn't come from finding someone who won't hurt you. It comes from becoming someone who won't abandon themselves. She titled it, "The Door I Closed." And the one I opened, the story went viral beyond anything before. But numbers didn't move her anymore. What moved her was the email she received from a young girl in Texas. "I thought being cheated on meant I wasn't enough. After reading your story, I realized I just deserved better." Emma stared at the message for a long time. This was bigger than her. Her journey from betrayal to self-worth had become someone else's roadmap. Months later, Daniel stood in her apartment kitchen cooking dinner, humming softly. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect. It was peaceful. She leaned against the counter, watching him. He looked up. "What?" "Nothing." She smiled. "Just grateful." "For what?" "For not rushing me." He walked over and kissed her forehead. "For staying," he said simply. And for the first time in her life, staying didn't feel like a promise made in fear. It felt like a choice made in confidence. Emma understood something powerful then. Happiness isn't loud. Healing isn't linear. And betrayal isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's the beginning of your strength. She walked to her desk one last time that night and typed the closing line of her book. She once feared empty rooms. Now she knows peace lives there too. And inside, her heart was no longer searching. It was home.